But maybe it's the sense of urgency from the, if you will, the political arena of our nation at the moment. And boy, talk about godless things being exposed on a regular basis, and how we need to be people of faith standing firm in that to everyday life, and those around us and those we're accustomed to being around passing from us, and life changing in that way. There's just a lot going on, but for whatever reason, again, I'd love to put my finger on it, but from ministerial association meetings to gathering with youth and the 252 organization to just being here, something stirs in my spirit that God's going to reveal something that we're to be very specific about, and that we may not just be this little body right here, but it's certainly going to be something impacting of this county. I've just sensed that for almost 3 months now. And anyway, that's where the Lord led me to begin this series, and I'd love to tell you how long this series is going to go. And it may not last 2 more Sundays, it may not last past Easter, but I was led to the book of Jonah. And when God speaks, we're called to action, is what I knew to title it. And I hope you're pondering as you go, because sometimes we look and we're in that place and we go, okay, so it maybe is hope for a new season for you. Beth's mom looked at me when I was down working and stopped through and visited with her. And she said, you know what, I'm 84, way along in the battle for cancer, and I've been really, really fussing with God the last 2 years fighting this cancer battle about why in the world do I have to still be here? I don't have anything left I need to do. And she said, lo and behold, then I go and visit this nursing home. That's really an assisted living facility. It's not a full care facility. She's still independent. She said, and all of a sudden I'm meeting these people, and I just thought, wait a minute, you know what? I might could have an impact in somebody's life there that doesn't know God. Even at 84, I could do something. And I said, well, now see, there's a good way to look at this transition. Sometimes we get in that place, and whether it's, I've been in ministry 25 years or I'm 84 years old, we've completed certain things, and we think, well, surely God's not going to call me to something. I've done plenty. What if you're right on the cusp of being called into something, if you will, as magnanimous, as huge, as impacting as Jonah's word from God for Nineveh? Do you want to miss that? I don't think so. Of course, we've followed the journey thus far, and we got to the beginning of the place where now Jonah not only has run, and that ended up impacting all kinds of people, then he confessed that he had brought on bad for others and got thrown overboard, and now he's finally coming face to face with God. And we began there. We'll pick back up there. Verse 17. Well, we'll pick up in verse 1 of chapter 2 there in the book of Jonah. So now it's not Jonah against his own will or emotions. Again, he loaded up and ran on that ship to Tarshish. It's not Jonah against other people, and all the other people are going, oh, wait, what'd you do? Because they're dying because he made a bad choice. It's now Jonah in the belly of a fish. And the word says this in verse 1 of chapter 2. Then Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God, from the fish's belly. Let's stop right there. Jonah prayed to the Lord, his God. We all have found ourselves, if you will, in places or seasons or circumstances of rebellion at some point in life. But the word says here that Jonah prayed to his. I love that very personal statement, because God never ceased to be Jonah's God, in spite of the fact that Jonah was running from God. In spite of the fact that Jonah was living in rebellion to God, the Father never ceased to be the Father. I love that very personal and impacting statement, because it gives a permanency there. God will never cease to be my Father, even if I choose to be in rebellion and live apart from that, or run, as in Jonah's case. We love to debate that issue. The prodigal son was still a son when he found himself eating corn cobs, and he knew where the Father was, and he returned to him. Jonah is praying to his God. That relationship was there. It never ceased. God didn't throw down all the gauntlet and say, you know what, I have no idea who that Jonah guy is anymore. I'm not his God. He's not my child. We're done. We're separated. There was no great divorce. The reality is that Jonah had separated himself from God in a relationship. There was damage, if you will, to the relationship. And now Jonah's in the place where he realizes, you know what? Hello, I've got to raise my hand. I'm the guy who screwed up here. And the one thing, the only source, and again, the Power of the Blood songs, my heart there, the only hope I have, I'm set apart from him at the moment. I'm in a place that I chose that is not of him, and I need to be restored to the one and only thing that will help me. The word says, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the fish's belly, and he said, I cried out to the Lord because of my affliction, and he answered me. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice, God, and you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. All your billows and your waves passed over me. Then I said, I have been cast out of your sight. Yet I will look again toward your holy temple. Stop there for just a minute. Number one, out of the belly of Sheol, and from the Hebrew word, an implication there of the pure hell. It probably wasn't the most pleasant place to be in the belly of this fish. Hello. Now, I don't know if you've ever been through a fish market, an open air market, but anyway, fish can be pretty nasty stinky. So if they're that nasty stinky on the outside, I really don't think I have any mind of being on the inside one. Hello. So this was not a pleasant place, but at least Jonah's acknowledging, I cried out to the Lord because of my affliction, where I found myself. And guess what? Sometimes we find ourselves in those places of affliction just like Jonah because we did it. We heard, we didn't want to do it, and so we took off in the other direction, and we find ourselves in a place of affliction because of our choices. But may I tell you that not always is that the case, as you well know. Sometimes life just happens. And from my childhood forward, I've used every analogy from waking up with an internal birth defect at birth, in other words, to my father being an alcoholic. Life just happens. I didn't choose those things. We can find ourselves in a place of affliction that we caused, and again, like Jonah, but may I tell you, there are times, and we will feel that they are just as hellish. We will feel that that is a place of Sheol, a place where, and he goes on to say, what? God, I didn't even know if you were still there. I had gotten so far away from you, I didn't even know if you would still recognize my name when I came into your presence. Life can be really dark because of sin, can it not? Mm-hmm. And it may not even be our sin. But again, we learn that from Jonah. Sometimes the sin of others that brings great darkness into our lives is very, very disparaging. I didn't do it, but guess what? I'm feeling the implication of it. Sin is very dark, and that place where we feel like, God, do you really know how painful this circumstance is? Do you really know how hurtful this is in my life? And again, maybe that's a wayward child, maybe that's a broken marriage, maybe that's a job situation where every day you've been hounded for years and years and years. I met with a lady a couple of weeks ago in counsel, and her work is driving her crazy because she says, Brother Royce, all I hear is GD and this and that. She said, everybody's using it. It's horrible. And anytime I try to stand for my faith, it's like I'm isolated. These people just work me over. She said, and I wonder sometimes if God even knows where my office is. I said, you know what? I understand that. Jonah is in that place now, but by his own choice. And he says, God, I called out to you, but you answered. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, and you heard my voice. There is no place but a beautiful thought. There is no place. And we've all known, each in your own testimony, you've all known some places that are pretty dark. You've all known some places that were very challenging, and you go, God, I'm not really even sure that you know I'm here. But Jonah says what? Even in that place, you heard my voice. God, Now Jonah's speaking in rebellion. And one of those rhetorical questions, have you ever been in the place where you knew that you heard God speak and you determined to go another direction, and then you found yourself in that Jonah spot and you're going, holy cow, how much worse could it be? Even though I chose it, how do I get out? And Jonah says here, what? God, you cast me into the deep, into the heart of the seas, and the floods surrounded me. And your billows and your waves passed over me. Then I said, I have been cast out of your sight. God, I've gone too far. I've done too much. God, because of my choices, you allowed this. Again, he's in the depths of the ocean, literally, in a fish's belly. But he goes on to say, yet I will look again toward your holy temple. When he was in that place of darkness, when he was in that place of desperation, when he was in that place that he created. Get that. He created. God didn't give up on him. Again, tossing Jonah over the boat. All these non-believer guys crying out to all kinds of gods, little g, are going crazy. Instantly the sea is made whole and they're safe. Their hearts turn quickly. They're going, whoa, wait a minute. This Jonah guy must have known somebody. He must be the real God. But now Jonah, again, being cast overboard, if you will, didn't suck and blow wind for the last time. He didn't sink to the bottom and die. God, even in the midst of darkness, prepared salvation, redemption. I said we love that. We love in somewhat of a maniacal way. Sometimes we love to use that term and go, well, you know what? He made his bed, let him lie in it. We love to look at people in situations of crisis and go, you know what? If they hadn't been so stupid, if they hadn't done those things, they wouldn't be where they are. Well, guess what? God gives clear evidence here that just because we have fallen in our flesh is not an instantaneous condemnation from him that, okay, you screwed up, you're dead, you're out of here. Jonah was rescued even in darkness. Now, God didn't catch him as he went overboard and set him on the shore and go, Jonah, son, we need to have a talk. No. God let him go deep in that darkness. God let him be in a place where he just felt so alone because why? He was rebelling against God. He was running from what he knew to be the truth. And God said, okay, you want to know what that feels like? I'll let you. But at least my hand is underneath you, holding you up. We really need to be mindful of that. Yes, there are stupid people in the world. Some folks are just outright idiots. And you wonder, holy cow, can you not turn the on switch on, okay? Really, something needs to reconnect up here. They're not using what God gave them, in other words. My wife hates for me to speak that bluntly, but it is what it is. And when we find those people in that circumstance, we look and we love that Pharisee robe, like the Pharisee and the publican praying in the temple, and go, God, I'm so glad. Aren't you glad, God, I'm not like that? Friends, we are only anything more than anybody else only because of the mercy of God and because we've been faithful to him and he has delivered us out. And so Jonah says, what? Yet I will look again toward your holy temple. No matter who they are, where they are, we have the opportunity to be salt and light. Again, my friend and his wife visiting two uncles that are very avowed atheistic men. And going, you know what? The very least we can do is show up and load them up. Just pour salt as heavy as we can. And be light in that dark place as much as we can. Because they're old and they're dying. And we'd love to see God break through. These guys, again, they're in their senior years. They're way on up in age. One of them was not in great health. And you look and go, well, you know what? I've done all I can. Thank you. Wash your hands of it and let it be. But we never, we never have the luxury of giving up as long as they're breathing. Hello? Why? Because God didn't give up on us. Here's a clear example of that. Jonah's wreaked havoc on a lot of people's lives. But God, in Jonah's confession that, you know what, I ran, it was wrong, God didn't even destroy him. He allowed him would settle into that darkness now. Again, he felt like he was totally separated. He felt like he was in a hellish place. He felt like he was totally separated from God. And he's crying out and going, God, I'm not even sure you're here anymore. And if you're not, it's only because of me, not you. You didn't run from me. I ran from you. And he said, so I'm doing the one thing that I know to do, and I will look again toward your holy temple. And the one thing that I know, in spite of who I am, is I know that you are never changing. Or you're never changing. Your word is ever true. You are faithful in every way. Return to your holy temple. Not that he literally got up out of the fish and went back to the temple. He literally returned to that place in his mind and his heart where he knew he was anchored. And that was the truth of the Word of God. What a beautiful picture. What a beautiful thought. And how we, number one, need to recognize that. The blame game, if you will, the self-abasement is going on at this moment. Jonah's going, how stupid could I be? Holy cow, it's no wonder I'm where I am. And I'm sure many of you, like I, have taken the occasion to just beat yourself silly. Going, how could I be so stupid? How could I end up in that situation? I went there before, I'd never go again. Then lo and behold, I found myself in the same circumstance again. How could I... And we want to, if you will, we want to beat ourselves up emotionally. And the reality is there's a healthy abasement as in Jonah acknowledging his wrong. But you know what? Just sitting and souring and soaking in it ain't going to get you out of it. Just going, you know what? I blew it and I'm so miserable. Life's so horrible. Well, you know what? The only way you're going to get out of that place of darkness is by taking another course of action, not sitting and drowning in it. I can sit and beat me up for as long as I'm on the planet over life circumstances that I chose or created. But I wouldn't have fixed any of them and stayed in there. Jonah turns his focus to the one and only hope that there is, and that is in the person of God. He says, so I return to your temple. Verse 5 goes on, the waters surrounded me, even to my soul. The waters surrounded me, even to my soul. Let that sink in. Jonah says, God, I was in such a deep place that there wasn't a deeper place I could reach. And everything in me was dark. I felt as close to hopelessness as I could get. The deep closed around me. Weeds were wrapped around my head. I went down to the moorings of the mountains. The earth with its bars closed behind me forever. Yet you brought up my life from the pit. O Lord my God. There is no place too far. There is no thing too great. There is no thing too deep. When God speaks and we hear, we know we've heard his voice, and we run in rebellion, or we absolutely refuse, and it can be I want to say a lifelong refusal, but it really can be a lifelong refusal. I remember the movement, if you will, of Promise Keepers. I was invited to speak at a Promise Keepers event. The movement of the Promise Keepers, and men rising up and gatherings of men. And men looking at me going, Brother Royce, I haven't ever been the head of my household. I haven't been a spiritual leader. I haven't taken charge. All I do is go make the money, and I make plenty of it, and I let my wife and my kids run the world. How in the world do I go back and announce to them, raise my hand, I screwed up. I have not been what God created me to be, and I need to be the father and the husband and the leader and the protector and the provider that God created me to be, because you know what? You've only been getting half a dad and half a husband. It's been 30 years in my marriage, Brother Royce. How do you turn that around? Well, guess what? You can't, but God can. What a beautiful picture it was to see so many lives and families and homes restored. Women who had been literally the spiritual leader, the burden carrier of every kind, breathing huge sighs of relief, going, wow, God's huge. I finally have a godly husband. Now, again, just one example there, but I want you to understand where Jonah is coming from here. He is literally taken all of his life and wrapped it up in just a few verses here. It says, you know, from my mind being wrapped up with what did he say? Weeds wrapped around my head. How many things get in your head? Listen to the world. thoughts will be going crazy. 1 Corinthians, somewhere around 14, somewhere between 10 and 14. We were called what? To take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ for God's glory. Why? Because if you let the enemy have a minute here, he'll take you 10 years down the road. We have to keep control here. Why? Because the enemy wants to work on it. He says, my mind was wrapped up with weeds. I was down to the very moorings of the mountains. I was in such a deep place, I didn't figure like there could be another deep place. There was so much going on with me, and the earth itself was closing in behind me forever. I didn't see a way out of this. Life can be that dark, but may I tell you, friend, there is no place that God won't deliver us from. And Jonah going, you know what? When I got to the very bottom and didn't feel like there was another breath left, God, you showed up. I finally listened, man. And you did what? You brought up my life from the pit. Oh, Lord, my God. A declaration. God, only you could have even seen this far in the pits of the depths of the earth, and you found me there, and you brought me up, and I was responsible, God. I created the circumstance. I ran from you. And again, in Jonah's case, it was a call to ministry, but it could be anything. There is no place, and there is no relief. That's why I love his statement here. There is no relief like turning it all over to God. Oh, Lord, my God. When I thought there couldn't be any more, you showed up. You came through. You were everything. God, in spite of me, when my soul fainted within me, verse 7 continues, I remembered the Lord when my prayer went up to you into your holy temple. Those who regard worthless idols forsake their own mercy, but I will sacrifice to you with the voice of thanksgiving, and I will pray what I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. Salvation is of the Lord. The only hope we have is of the Lord. Now, again, get the picture here. He's acknowledging all of this while he's in the belly of a fish. He got it, even though he was in that dark place. You know what? When those guys tossed me overboard for my own rightful purposes, in other words, I had chosen it, I was causing the grief. When they tossed me overboard, God had the right to do anything he wanted with me and absolutely destroy me. And you know what? I'm sitting here in a stinking, rotten fish's belly, and it's way more than I deserve. God saved me. He didn't save me and again set me on a mountain or beach and pat me on the back and go, now we need to talk, son. God let me go to low places, but you know what? He never let go of me. He could have killed me. He could have taken me out right there in that moment because I deserved it. But he didn't. He spared me. And in that sparing, even though the sparing was a feeling of despair, because it was a dark place, it called his mind and his heart to the recollection of the reality that, and he just stated it, my salvation comes from the Lord. The only hope I have out of this circumstance, the only hope I have of surviving this life, the only hope that I have for all time is the salvation of Jesus Christ. What a beautiful picture. We read it in Revelation 12, and if we can take hold of it and live it, Jonah's getting into that. We're going to move into that proclamation next Sunday. But Jonah's getting into that. He's realizing, you know what? And again, Revelation 12 says it. It says what? That those who were faithful believers were overcomers, overcame the enemy, overcame their circumstances by what? By the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. I need, hear me, you need. And Jonah's getting it at this moment. You and I need to testify to the powerful work of God in our lives. Why? Not only is it strength to others, but it's a reminder to our hearts and our minds so that we stay focused. There is no other place. There is no other hope. There is nothing else I can depend upon, even in the darkest of places, whether I put myself there, i.e. Jonah, or whether circumstances beyond my control, someone else, something else, came upon me in affliction in life. The only hope I have is in the salvation of the Lord Jesus Christ. And so I want to testify to the power of his blood. His blood overcame it all. It's done. So by the blood of the Lamb And the word of my testimony, me testifying to who he was in that circumstance and sharing that where someone else might have had, if you will, a parallel circumstance, something similar, I can then be an incredible witness for the person and the power of the Lord Jesus Christ. And I think we miss that so often. So a lot of perspective here, both from the personal perspective of Jonah realizing his desperate need for God in his running in the belly. Jonah realizing he was at the point of death and God could have allowed it to happen, but instead God, even in darkness, God prepared salvation. Almost a paradox, isn't it? Even in the darkest of places, even though Jonah chose it, God was still saving him. He was sparing him. Again, he could have been tossed overboard, sucked up a few gallons of ocean water and been gone. But God still had a plan. Don't feel like you can outdo God in terms of your failure versus his mercy. You can't fail too much to get beyond God's reach. You can't have anything too great behind you that God can't overcome in you and use you. So Jonah's looking again now on not only a personal plane, but he's also looking in the spiritual plane. But then he's also looking going, okay, wait a minute. So there was purpose in this. God spoke. I heard it. I was supposed to go to Nineveh. All this stuff has happened because I didn't. Now I'm realizing there may be something else here that I wasn't getting because I was looking totally selfishly, totally for me. And God wanted to speak so that I could speak, again, that word of testimony. He wanted to use me for something bigger. And the word goes on, and we'll wrap up here and pick up next week. So the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land. I'll talk about a boy in need of a shower. Can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Yet at the same time, there are circumstances in my life that I can't imagine. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and the fish threw Jonah up on dry land. All of a sudden, in an instant, in a moment beyond our comprehension, yet in some ways we can parallel. Jonah was from that place of absolute desolation to an opportunity. Not everything resolved. An opportunity of light. In the belly of the fish, 3 days. Whole lot of contemplating going on there. And like this, God delivers him from that darkness, sets him on dry land, and creates an opportunity. Didn't finish it all. Creates an opportunity for a new beginning. What new beginning? What new beginning does God want to work for you from some circumstance that may be, again, of your own choosing, maybe of somebody else's choosing, but that in some way has impacted your life to the place of darkness that you relate to Jonah's story thus far? Father God, we just love you for loving us. We thank you that you're merciful and gracious. God, so often we look at our circumstances, and if they're of our own choosing, we certainly wag our heads, sir, and are ashamed in your presence. God, if they're not of our choosing, we certainly look at it and sometimes too often go, why? God, why? Yet all the while, sir, there's no question that you're preparing us, you're rescuing us, you're our salvation, you're holding on to us, sir. Maybe that we would just turn our view from us to someone or somewhere else. God, we're a small people here. God, our heart's desire to see a big work from you in this county. And so I pray, God, that you would help us learn from the life of Jonah, the reality that in spite of who we are, where we've been, whatever's gone on, the challenges that we face even as a collective body here at Satartia. God, that you want to use us. God, that we would begin to see that we have been cast out of all kinds of previous darkness, set on dry land for a new beginning for you. God, lead us toward whatever that is, I pray. In the matchless